Trump declassified the JFK, RFK, and MLK files. I believe they've got a couple of weeks to shred the evidence before it's completely released, which is what I expect they're probably trying to figure out what to do. I mean, I'm not 100% certain what the declassification means. Does this mean without redactions? Are they going to be going through and they're going to redact entire pages and then say, see, we declassified it, but it's heavily redacted and the whole page is black? Is it going to be like that? Are they going to have time to shred a couple pages here and there and cover up some of the evidence? I mean, what's going to happen? But let's go over this executive action. Declassification of records concerning the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Here's Trump signing it and then later saying, give this pen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Watch this.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order ordering the declassification of files relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades. And everything will be revealed. Okay? Give that to RFK Jr.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is what the order actually says. He says, I previously accepted proposed redactions from executive departments and agencies in 2017 and 2018, but ordered the continued reevaluation of those remaining redactions. Then he says, in the presidential memorandum of April 26, 2018, I also ordered agencies to re-review each of those redactions over the next 3 years and disclose information that no longer warrants continued withholding under the standards set forth in Section 5(2)(d) of the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992. President Biden issued subsequent certifications with respect to these records in 2021, 2022, and 2023, which gave agencies additional time to review the records and withhold information from public discourse. I have now determined that the continued redaction and withholding of information from records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is not consistent with the public interest, and the release of these records is long overdue. And although no act of Congress directs the release of information pertaining to the assassinations of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have determined that the release of all records in the federal government's possession pertaining to each of those assassinations is also in the public interest. My guess is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., really sat him down and had a conversation about this one, especially since he said, give this pen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So he says, within 15 days of the date of this order, the Director of National Intelligence and Attorney General shall, in coordination with the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs and Counsel to the President, present a plan to the President for the full and complete release of records relating to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So they've got 15 days to come up with a plan. Okay. Within 45 days of the date of this order, the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General shall, in coordination with the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs and the Counsel of the President, review records related to the assassinations of RFK and MLK and present a plan to the President for the full and complete release of these records. So 15 days to come up with a plan for the release of records for JFK, 45 days to come up with a plan to release the records for RFK and MLK. So let's see if it's, okay, so that's it. That's what this says. They've got that long. So it's still unclear when we're going to get the records, but he is saying, look, there is no longer a need to withhold this from the public, go through everything, decide what needs to be redacted. The problem is, what do you think they would redact? Right? I mean, if it implicates the CIA and if it's like hard, cold evidence that the CIA is implicated, my guess is that's what they're going to redact. I mean, they shouldn't, but that's what I would think that they would do. Why wouldn't they? And why would they allow the CIA to be implicated? I mean, I guess they could allow the CIA to be implicated and then just say, yeah, we don't need the CIA anymore. I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know if the American people, I mean, do you think that if the records actually completely implicate the CIA, that the American people will demand an end to the CIA? Do you really think that the American people would do that? I mean, when the original records, not the original records, when the latest batch were released, and it showed that, the CIA for many years says, well, we don't know anything about Oswald. And then it turned out from the records, actually, they did know a lot about the guy, and they lied about that to the American people for years, and that it looked like they were totally aware and maybe even implicated in the assassinations. And the American people, it didn't even make headline news. I mean, it didn't even make newspapers. It was nothing. The assassination of a sitting US president, and it wasn't anywhere to be found. So, if they're probably thinking, look, it doesn't matter what comes out, no one's going to care and nothing's going to change. So that's kind of disheartening, right? It's something to think about. Also, there's a possibility something else comes out. I mean, the last guest we had on the show implicated Cuba. He said it was the Cuban radicals, that the ones that they'd been wanting to oust Castro for a long time, they were here in the country, and they're the ones that ended up killing JFK. It was them. So if it points to the Cubans, the Cuban really, and not the Cubans in Cuba, but the Cubans in Florida, if it points to them, or if it points to, who else are they going to blame? They're going to blame Russia, right? Or, I mean, there's a possibility that these records show a bunch of stuff that they shouldn't show. And how confident are we as the American people, knowing how much our government lies to us and covers stuff up? I mean, are we confident that these records would be not just complete, which they probably won't be? I mean, they're going to be redacting a bunch of stuff, but what about accurate and not meddled with? Can we trust that? Because I got to tell you, I don't really trust that. I don't trust that they're not going to be somehow doctored or meddled with, or just somehow used to lie to us again. Government lies to us all the time. Same thing if we ever were to get the Epstein files. Unfortunately, he has not released the Epstein files. I think when it comes to Epstein, it's a little bit different, because with JFK, everybody that was involved in that, potentially involved, they're all dead. So it's like, what's it to us to release this? But Epstein, it's a lot of very powerful people who are alive today who could be implicated in those records. So I don't think we're going to get the Epstein records. But even if we did, I don't have any faith that they're not going to be doctored to implicate some people that really, because if you believe that the Epstein operation was a Mossad operation, which I believe, I mean, there's enough evidence to point to it being a Mossad operation. And perhaps Jeffrey Epstein was also working for some other intelligence agencies like the United States or the UK. These are all possibilities, but certainly Mossad. How do I know that the records aren't just going to implicate the people that Mossad wants us to? They're like, okay, we can implicate those people, that's fine. But these others, we still have dirt on them, and we don't want them to be ousted because they're still working for us, essentially. They're still doing our bidding. I don't really have any faith in that. But it's still fun, right? It's still fun that these records are going to come out. I just don't know if we're going to really learn anything new, if there's going to be really any bombshells. All right, let's go to the next thing that happened. The COVID mandate. This was not an executive order, but this was an instruction to U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services. What had been going on, believe it or not, most of the mandates had been rescinded. Most of the COVID mandates had been rescinded, except there was this one that forced immigrants who were applying for immigration papers to the United States. So if they were applying for visas or applying for green cards, they had to prove that they had the COVID jab. And this was true up until today. I mean, this is how absurd this was. We are long past COVID. The vast majority of people are no longer taking the jab. It's got hardly anybody's going in for their 20th booster. And yet the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services was requiring people, if they wanted to, any sort of change in immigration status. So if you were applying for a visa, if you were applying for a green card, so if you're already a visa holder but you're applying for a green card, or if you're applying for citizenship, if you're a green card holder, you would have to show evidence that you had the COVID jab. Riley Gaines, the swimmer, she actually tweeted this out the day before. So she's married to somebody who's not a U.S. citizen. She says, just got another letter from USCIS saying they won't give my husband his green card until he gets the COVID jab. This is ridiculous. We've been married coming up on 3 years. We've spent thousands for the submitted forms to expire on their time. We're hoping for change soon. And she posts this letter that says, effective October 1st, 2021, applicants subject to the immigration medical examination must complete the COVID-19 vaccine series before the civil surgeon can complete an immigration medical examination and sign Form I-693. This applies to Form I-693 signed by civil surgeon on at or after October 1st of 2021. So just totally ridiculous. But luckily, right after she tweets this, within mere hours, the Immigration Enforcement Bureau here in the United States changed their policy and dropped the COVID mandate. So now people can immigrate into the United States without the COVID jab. Immigrating in legally, right? That's a big thing there. I mean, Trump has done a lot on the, when it comes to for immigrants. I mean, this is a big thing for people that are trying to immigrate in. At the same time, he's obviously going after those who have illegally come into the country. But this, I think, is also a showcasing of we're not against immigrants. We actually want to help immigrants. And this is one of the ways to help them because so many were refusing the jab. And because of it, they were unable to get documentation to be here and to stay here with their families or to immigrate in. And this is now helping them get past that hurdle. Another big one today, Trump banned CBDCs. This is central bank digital currency is now banned in the United States. So this was another nod, I think, to the cryptocurrency world. There was a lot of chatter that the central banks would try to develop their own CBDCs to undermine Bitcoin, to undermine cryptocurrency. So Trump has been, saying that America is going to be the crypto capital, and he's been working with a lot of those in the crypto world. And I think the pardoning of Ross Ulbricht was sort of a nod to the crypto crowd. So he signs this presidential action today, strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology. And it says the digital asset industry plays a crucial role in innovation and economic development in the United States, as well as our nation's international leadership. It is therefore the policy of my administration to support the responsible growth and use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and related technologies across all sectors of the economy, including by protecting and promoting the ability of individual citizens and private sector entities alike to access and use for lawful purposes open public blockchain networks without persecution, including the ability to develop and deploy software to participate in mining and validating, to transact with other persons without unlawful censorship, and to maintain self-custody of digital assets. He says also to promote and protect the sovereignty of the United States dollar, including through actions to promote the development and growth of lawful and legitimate dollar-backed stable coins worldwide. And he goes on to also say he's going to provide regulatory clarity and certainty built on technology-neutral regulation. So, if regulations come in, which they will for crypto and other blockchain technology, he's saying that this is going to be regulatory clarity, which it should be. But he goes on, and this is the big one, taking measures to protect Americans from the risks of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States, including by prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and use of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States. So he banned CBDCs. Now, critics of this will say, yeah, okay, he banned CBDCs. But with the regulations that are going to be coming towards crypto, they're basically just going to parlay control over crypto using regulations. So they won't need CBDCs. They'll just regulate the crypto world and it'll be all the same. They'll put restrictions, regulations, tracking or whatever, and it will be no different than as if the government had, or if the central bank, if the Fed had issued CBDC. So that's what the critics are saying. That is yet to be seen. I think it's going to be very difficult to protect anonymity in this country with anything. I think that, now we're living in this real digital world, and it's really difficult to remain anonymous unless you're going to go completely off the grid, not use the internet, not use an iPhone that uses Face ID or thumbprint anything, or, it's increasingly difficult to maintain anonymity and to not be traceable. And that's ultimately the issue with CBDCs is that, well, there's a couple of issues with CBDCs, is that if the central bank says we're no longer going to be printing, we're no longer going to, the Treasury prints the money, but we're no longer going to be dealing like we're going to go cashless. We're going to go to a cashless society. I mean, most people at this point are pretty cashless anyway. I mean, you're using your bank cards for all the transactions, or you're using Apple Pay, right? You're using all of these different methods, PayPal. So you're already pretty much cashless. But going CBDCs would allow them to really debank you if they didn't like your viewpoints. I mean, if they just felt, if they classify you as a terrorist, which, that's always a constantly evolving definition of who is a terrorist, what's considered terrorism. Right now, if you're like pro-Palestine, you're potentially considered a terrorist. So the issue with CBDCs specifically is that they could track you, they could cut you off, they could debank you, and they could track you. And that's the threat with CBDCs specifically. But that's already a threat for a lot of people using bank cards and whatnot. They're able to debank and cut us off, but CBDCs would be much more, it'd be a lot easier because it would be centralized, which was the issue with central bank digital currency. So that's, so it's interesting. It's interesting that that's going on. This is definitely a libertarian and crypto world push. And Trump is actually, I mean, look, you got to give it to the guy. He's actually giving the things to the people that helped him get elected. I mean, he's actually living up to his promises. The libertarians and the crypto world heavily supported him, and he's actually giving them what they've asked for. So it's pretty incredible to see somebody who's getting elected on certain things and he's saying, okay, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. That's also problematic, right? When we look at forever wars in the Middle East, a lot of those are obviously very controlled by Israel's interests and not the United States' interests. And he has $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and he's got a lot of other very pro-Israel backers and Zionist backers. And so we'll see. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because his now chief of Middle East policy that he put into a position of real power at the Department of Defense is very America first. So there's also the really America first people that got him elected. And, I'm sure he's trying to kind of navigate through this. And I think we'll get into it a little bit more as we move on, but because there's other topics tonight that will really hit on that. But I think he is delivering to everybody to give them something to make them somewhat happy. I just don't think he's going to give to the radicals what they really, really want. But it's so interesting to see 4 days in, and the Trump presidency is already doing a lot. I mean, we're not even out of week 1 yet. What does tomorrow bring? It's always going to be a new day. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.